we are going to go into the panel discussion on race and migration in Germany. And I'll call immediately the moderator of this program, Mr. Mark Dunfred, founder and director of International ICD. Put your hands together for him. Thank you, sir. So you handle that now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and I am very much looking forward to hopefully what might even be the climax of the evening, a chance for us to enter into a multilateral discussion on a very important issue, especially today, the issue of race and migration in Germany. I'd like to first invite to the stage my fellow panelists, and perhaps we could do a brief round of applause as I mention each of their names. Although actually, yeah, well, I'll say the names first, and once you're here, I'll say a few words about who you are. First of all, Elizabeth Olienka Adekule. Elizabeth, if you could please join me. Dr. Anatole Kenfak. Dr. Kenfak, please. And then I've heard Pastor Mepieri is not yet here. Is Pastor Mepieri here? If so, make yourself known. If not, we'll continue, and I will invite in her place Jeremiah Mosese. Oh. Jeremiah, if you could please join us on the stage. Can I sit here? Please, please. Then I'd like to invite Sylvester Urgi. Sylvester, if you could please join us. Sylvester is here, yes, on his way. Excellent, okay, perfect. Darnell Stephen Summers. Darnell. And finally, Tabu Tindi. And now let me maybe say a few words of introduction first about our panelists. It's a very diverse and a very interdisciplinary panel, which is exactly as I like it. And then I'll say maybe just a few words to get the discussion going. But really, we like to keep this as multilateral as possible. And we would also like to get questions and discussion from you, the audience, as much as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, Elizabeth Olayenka Adelikunle, and excuse me about the pronunciation on everyone, I'll say that in advance, I apologize, is a well-versed social entrepreneur, community developer, children's rights expert, consultant, instructor, and facilitator. She's the co-founder and director of the NGO African Women and Youth Organization, committed to educating, equipping, and empowering African women and young people. So maybe another round of applause, please, for Elizabeth. Welcome. Dr. Habilitat Anatole Kenfak is a senior research associate at the Free University in Berlin, specializing in physical and theoretical chemistry. He has over 15 years of professional experience, which started in Cameroon, Dresden, and today in Berlin. If you could please give a warm welcome once again, Dr. Kenfak. And then jumping on in the place of Pastor Mepieri, Jeremiah Mosese is a film producer, as well as a producer and director of documentary films, initially from Lesotho. So a warm welcome for Jeremiah Mosese. Sylvester Nagabu Urgi is fondly known as an established Berliner. Initially from Aba, an industrial city in the southeast of Nigeria, he studied economics in Russia. He came to Berlin in 1996, and from 1999 until 2003, he studied information and technology systems electronics. Sly worked in the computer industry for 1 year, gathering all experience needed for him to establish his own computer company in 2004, Sly Computers. Please, a warm welcome for Sylvester Urgi. Darnell Stephen Summers, proud and honored to say a good colleague and a good friend of mine at the ICD, is a journalist, film director, Vietnam veteran, as well as a member of the organization Vietnam Veterans Against the War, an accomplished musician, and also a very important member of the ICD team. So a warm welcome for Darnell Stephen Summers. And Tabu Tindi is a well-known Berliner, originally from South Africa. He is a filmmaker, producer, and live performer, and is known in Germany for bringing activism-related issues to the forefront. A warm welcome for Tabu Tindi. Wow. So the topic that we're going to speak about today is not one that I'm actually an expert in, and so therefore I see my role really as to pose questions to get this conversation going, and then I really leave it to you to enter into the discussion and pose the questions that are most important to you. I see myself a little bit as an outsider. I'm not German, and also in terms of the issue of race and migration, that's not necessarily my academic field. However, I am an American citizen, and I know as an American this is a topic, of course, that we do give a lot of thought and reflection to. As I think about really what it is that holds American identity together for me, I would say it's actually immigration. I think as you look at the history of the United States, I would argue that all individuals currently living in the USA have a link to immigration. Aside from a very small number of Native Americans, of which I'm proud to say part of my ancestry is, everyone else in the USA came from somewhere else. Some by choice in the case of pilgrims and travelers, some not by choice in the case of slavery. But no matter what the story is, and obviously there's many stories, I think we do all hold together this link to immigration. Of course, it's a very different situation in Germany, where we find ourselves today, where many would argue first you sort of had Germany, and now, very recently, sort of these waves of immigration. Whether we talk about Turkish diaspora coming here, the guest worker phenomena, or the current phenomena with the refugees as well, I don't think Germany has the same experience as a country such as the USA. And for me, as an outsider looking in, I think that's part of the explanation as to why perhaps these discussions, these debates, are having a somewhat different form within the European context in Germany. So I think for us today, this is a vitally important issue to really deal, first of all, in a culturally diplomatic way. We are here at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, but to see how do we grapple with these issues. The Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, Darnell, I forget now, when we first did the Black History Month, we celebrated here in Berlin, a relatively new phenomena for Germany. Many may know in the USA every February, we've dedicated actually to Black History Month, looking at Africa, the African diaspora and beyond. The United Kingdom usually takes place in October every year. In Berlin, it's not such an established thing. I mean, it's been celebrated here and there, but it's certainly not a national holiday. And that was why it was very important for us to deal with that. But I found part of the struggle even there, issues, what does it mean to be black? Very difficult. When we're talking about black history, I got to think 30 to 40 definitions. I don't know how many you came across, Darnell, when we were doing this. But a very deep question, one that has to be dealt with sensitively and very carefully. So even just the terminology we're using is of vital importance. So for me, I'm fascinated by this topic. I'm looking forward to learning. As I said, I don't feel I can offer as much as our very talented panelists. And I'd like to begin immediately, really, by maybe having a few introductory words from each of them. I would encourage everyone to keep it relatively brief, just because we do want to allow for questions, discussions, as many voices to be heard as possible. So I know it's tempting, but let's try to do our best, keep it short, precise comments. And the way I would frame the initial introductory sentence is, for you, why is this issue important? Let's say the issue of race and migration in Germany, and how perhaps is it different today in light of the current migration flows, refugees, etc. And where do you see the big opportunities for us to improve? Of course, it's easier for us to look at challenges. It's easy for us to criticize. But I think for me, it would be interesting, where do you see opportunities? Do you see this as a chance where Germany really could also do something great to contribute locally or internationally? Are there opportunities for cultural diplomacy or elsewhere? And how you see the importance of this issue. So why don't we begin, maybe we can go left to right. I don't know, Jeremiah, you didn't, or from right to left. All right, Jeremiah, you were new to this discussion. So let's start here. And if each of us could maybe just say a few words of introduction, why is this issue important? And where do you see specific opportunities? What can civil society do? What can I do? What can we as citizens here concerned do to try to offer contributions to the issue, to the debate, and to the challenges of race and migration in Germany? Please. You can use there you go.
Ah, okay.
You have your own microphone.
I thought it was because my voice is. Yeah, it's okay. I just thought that my voice is loud enough that you. Okay, good. I mean, to answer, or not to answer the question, but to contribute to that is that I really don't know whether or not this is important. Really, a topic on race and migration in Germany or anywhere else in the world. I just think that there are other things, there are other aspects of life that we really need to focus on beyond just migration and race, because these are the things, these are the topics that serve to derail us from the cause. These are the topics that serve to actually divide and conquer and divide and create some kind of a conflict between people, because if we don't use such words as migration, if we don't use words such as race, then there is no need for people to have ideological ideas of discriminating, for example, or of looking at a person as a foreigner, or whatever the case is. So in my view, I just think that it is, of course, my personal view is that it will take a couple of generations to wipe this sort of ideas of our minds, but I think that we still have the opportunity and the possibilities to already change certain perspectives that we have within ourselves, which were brought to us, not necessarily by us, but by the generations before us.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Darnell?
Yeah. I think it's important, in fact, I know it's important in this particular context that we're in right now, about migration. People are dispersed over the whole planet. And so any movement, any collective movement of a particular group in a particular area has to be, like characterized as some type of movement of migration. 1848, and I think it's important for people to understand, have some sense of history, because you were talking about, Mark, you mentioned that your connection with this problem of migration is not that intense, but in fact it really is historically, because you do have German roots. So in 1848, there was this revolution in Germany, and people migrated or immigrated from Germany to the United States. 1848, slavery was in full swing in America and in South America, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Some of the German immigrants that went to the United States went out to the West. And I'm not sure exactly, I have to check this, but I think they were out in Wyoming. And this particular group was engaged in fighting against slavery. These Germans from Germany, from this country, and I think they were from somewhere in the southwest part of Germany. And this was a very important thing, because they had been fighting for certain rights in Germany and had to leave Germany because they had to flee Germany because of persecution. They come right to America, and the first injustices that they witness, they start to fight against them. So Germany has had a very close relationship to the question of migration, in that they were immigrants themselves to other places, in that they went to other places and conquered them in Africa. They forged colonies, oppressed African peoples, in fact, committed genocide. And so there's both sides of that coin. On the one side, oppression. On the other side, people indeed fighting against oppression, against slavery. So in today's context, people are fleeing wars that were instigated by many members of NATO. And now the chicken, as Malcolm X said, is coming home to roost. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I think we're all talking about personal opinion, and I have to speak on my opinion about race and migration issue. Actually, my brother over there started very good, but I want to disagree with him, because he wasn't, thinking that talking about race or migration to be an issue. I think it's a very important issue to be discussed, to be talked about all the time. Because communication is education. If I don't know it, if I'm not talked about it, then I don't know it. And again, I want us to elaborate it more. It shouldn't just only be about the Germans. You, an American, you might still have the same problems, and we're talking about the German community. No. Me as an African, I might as well have the same problem that you think the white person is having. So it's an issue to be talked about, and I think I always translate racism to hate, because if you just accept me for who I am, that means you don't hate me. But if you judge me simply because I'm black, then you hate me, and you hate my origin. So it's something to be talked about, and I believe we should bring it even back to our homes, to our kids, to our wives, to husbands, we should educate each other and come to the point that we should realize that we are humans. But at the same time, it's quite unfortunate that we are seeing ourselves in, I mean, more especially the blacks, I'm sorry, white people, I would say that you guys are more privileged. Not that you're privileged because you're more educated or because you're more intelligent or whatever, but because we're living in a white society, white world. And I'm talking from experience. I'm sorry if I might hurt somebody. The thing is that privileges are always there, considering color, considering where you're coming from. So it's an issue that should be talked about. Qualify me, address me with who I am, what is coming up from me. If I'm not good enough, it's a different thing. But please, I don't think it's well for one to be judged because just of your appearance. Nobody will feel good about it. So maybe we'll go more deep into it, but my message to everybody is that we should not just say, it's going to take time, let's just accept it. Please, let's talk about it. Let's educate ourselves about it. That is it. Talking is communication. Communication is education. Thank you.
If I may, let me throw in a few words before I give it over to the other side. I think, first of all, this is an important question where there are different answers. Is this relevant? Is it not relevant? Is this a problem or not? Unfortunately, I think it is a problem, this issue of race, in Germany, in the USA, actually around the world. And I think unfortunately, there are so many reminders. I remember when President Obama was elected, everyone said, okay, good, there's no more racism in the USA. Of course, it's not at all the case. We saw so many reminders already in the last 12 months in the USA that this still, unfortunately, is a major issue. As we look around Europe right now, especially economic crisis, different flows of people, etc., we're seeing extremism everywhere, even in Germany. And I think that's a really scary thing. And I think what it teaches me, we can't take anything for granted. This can happen anywhere. Extremism can really affect any local, any national situation. And it really should be part of the daily routine in kindergartens and high schools, etc., always to re-examine. As you were saying, I don't think it's a white thing or a black thing. I think I would argue, and I'll be provocative here, so hopefully I can get some debate about this. I would argue we all discriminate. We all have prejudice. And even though I'm the director of the ICD, it's sad for me to say that. Unfortunately, it's true. Whether we like it or not, we see the world through our own eyes. And that's something we have to accept. We have to accept our imperfection as human beings, as much as we want to be open-minded, etc. And I think that's something that does unite all of us. And I think it's not something we have to do once, but actually every day, because something that happens today may influence me, and I may think different tomorrow. And especially throw in a little economic crisis, throw in a little bit of challenges, then okay, I may start looking at whoever the group is differently. Another important point I want to underline, just for terminology, and then I'll give it further. You raised an important, or two words, or one word you mentioned, acceptance. And I think acceptance is a really important word as opposed to tolerance. And I think tolerance can be a very dangerous word. Do I tolerate you, or do I accept you? And I think a very important word, whether we translate into German or other languages, how we deal with our neighbors. And defining neighbor is another important term. Who is our neighbor? Is it just someone living next to me or someone living miles away from me? And do I accept them, or do I just tolerate them? And obviously, I'll have a very different relationship with them depending which word I use. And then another important word I'd love to discuss with you as well, neighbor. Is it enough for me to think about myself and my family and my community, or do I have to think about you? Do I have to think about my neighbor? What is my civic responsibility? Also a really deep question in the sense, where do we contribute? How do we see our brothers and sisters? Where do we draw the lines? And I have no answers for these questions, but these are very important things that I think do need to be re-examined. And I'd love to hear perspectives on all of these. Acceptance, tolerance, race, a variety of different perspectives have already been shared. But let's continue, Dr. Kanfak, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I also find this issue of racism and immigration very interesting, as other panelists already said. It is no question, it's a really important point. It's especially in Germany, where the present days where actually a lot of people are trying to migrate to Germany. Germany is actually considered as one of the most economically stable countries. That's why people are moving to here. And that's all normal. I mean, everyone wants to live a better condition. And that's the reason why it's happening like that, actually. And one thing that I also want to point out about racism is that people, it's really sort of very subtle point, because one tends to interpret easily that, or to experience a situation and tend to say this is a racism. This is definitely not. One has to be really careful about that. Because what the author of this book just told us, he said when he was inspired because when he first came here, coming into the U-Bahn, sitting in the U-Bahn, he saw people, the Germans sitting there fixed and not really like looking so sad. And if it's he might also like saying hello to him or greeting them, they don't respond. This is just their attitude. It's because they are shy. They don't know you, they're not open. But later on, when you get into them, you see a different face of people. But you might tend at the first stage to interpret that this is sort of racism. Then this is one issue that I think it is important to understand and to really realize and to know to know people. I mean, if you don't know people, then you might tend like saying something which is definitely not what they are. Then it is important to really know people from a society. Then that's a key issue. I have also my own experience when I came here not as an immigrant, but I came with the Humboldt Foundation Fellowship. So I mean, I got everything nicely. I was allowed to come and to really work in here. And even my boss told me that, okay, I'm in the East, because when I first contacted him, he was in the western part of Germany. And he said, okay, now are you willing again to come because I'm now in Dresden? And because of the issue of racism and all the like, are you really willing to come again? I said, okay, I will try. I first came alone without my family. And then when I came there, I was a bit scared. But throughout the years, I realized that it was totally different type of experience. I was open to people, and I realized that Germans and other people living that city were really like, okay, friendly. They were friendly. And some other people said they are victims of racism. They are victims of kind of worse situation. But personally, I did not really actually experience this. So that's one thing that I wanted also to point out. And as an introductory part, I think that's all.
Yeah, I think I'm going to kind of do a paraphrase from the beginning, because as a social worker, I think I have a very different approach, to what we've been talking about. Like some of the panelists have said, my brother, I mean, it's very important to talk about it. And if you're in my line of work that you have to escort women or youth to offices, this is, your daily, routine, it stacks you in the face. You have to deal with it. You have to educate the people, especially the youth or the women, So first and foremost, as an African woman that runs an NGO here, part of what we do, aside from counseling, aside from educating some of our women on how to, fight for their right or, assist them in getting, whatever they need in the system. I want to first and foremost say about the topic, migration and race. Racism, what is racism? You took it from a very activist point of view. I totally agree with you. But in the real sense, when we talk about racism, what is that? Is, to me, in a layman, I don't want to be too theoretical, it's an assumption that the person you are talking to is less intelligent than you are because of the color of their skin. You think you know better by the virtue of where you come from, through your birth or anything. So when you see intelligence coming from what you think is less intelligent, and because of that, you think those set of people should be confined to a certain place or a certain thing at this, You don't want to be on the same niveau with that person at any point in time. You can have a colleague that is a racist. Even if you are better than him or her, it's still going to be an issue each time. Maybe you have a boss that is not a racist. For example, it's my layman definition, You don't have to agree with me, but for over 10 years I've been working. Most people that I've found to be racist, even in the system in Germany, that's the problem. I am better. There's what we call in German, Übermensch. It does happen even within the German. You see some of the people coming from Munich, they think they are better than people that are from the eastern part of Germany. You know, so even within the system, so it doesn't have to deal with your skin anymore. Once you feel that by virtue of birth or heritage, privileges, you think you are better than the person, then it's an issue. And you also talked about perception. I've handled cases like we think is a racially motivated case, only for me to get there and I feel very stupid. Wow, because sometimes some of us as foreigners, Mark, you talk about civil right. I mean, our civic responsibility. Most of us are, I'm sorry to say, we are lazy. We don't get informed as foreigner. You know, the issue of migration is two-way. The people you are coming to meet, they need to educate themselves that they are receiving new people. They're not alone anymore. There's a cultural diversity in the city, which they need to embrace. And you that you are also coming, it's your responsibility to get informed. It's your responsibility to get to know your neighbor, to get to know where to go, what do I have to ask. So it's not only putting the blame on the German side alone. We also, as foreigners, we need to start asking questions. Because if you don't ask, not really like nobody cares, but they have other things to deal with. So when you start asking, then the government will have to listen. Then something will have to be done for you. So it's a two-way thing. And I realized that most of the foreigners are like, okay, we still want to do things the way we do it where we are coming from. You know, I was handling a case and I got there and the woman was like, Entschuldigen Sie bitte. Diese Antrag, sorry for my, I'll go back to English. Diese Antrag sollte schon seit 6 Wochen, yeah, abgegeben werden. So I was shocked, you know. We want to, I mean, you are, first and foremost, we are living in a land that is very organized. It doesn't really matter even if, you know, you have to do things right. There's no shortcut. So there are some of these few things, you know, that I feel in the course of my work, when you're dealing with people of different race and different background, that we, as foreigners, we need to. And you spoke about tolerance and acceptance. That I don't want to repeat what you have said, but above all, I just wanted to add something. Aside from tolerance and acceptance, I want to put the word respect. It's a two-way thing, you know. If you are dealing with people, I think it's a mutual respect, you know, sort of need to comes in. The people that you are dealing with, the Germans, and also we foreigners, we need to respect each other. Because most often than not, you cannot really have a true integration. This is the problem we are facing, even in the NGO world. Germans are rolling out millions of euros every year, go and get integrated into the society. It's all sometimes very, very political, you know. But if you are working with the grassroots, you realize that most of those funds, they are not yielding the desired result. They are not bringing out the best out of the foreigners because they really don't. People are starting asking questions. Integration. Some of these people have first degrees where they are coming from. So if language is the problem, some of them have gone back to school, they've banked another degree. Why can't they really find work in the system? So that's where we have this issue, like, aside from tolerance, acceptance, we need to have mutual respect that, okay, you can do as good as I can also do. I need to respect your Fähigkeit. That is
Capacity.
Your competence. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, so let me give you.
No, thank you very much. And just to follow up on 2 points there you made were really important. Respect, of course. Before we can get to respect, as I was saying, we need to have that very humble acceptance of also our own imperfection. Yeah. Then if we have that, then respect can come. And then I'd add another step before acceptance or tolerance, listening. So not just hearing, but listening. And really in a sincere way listening to our brothers and sisters, no matter where they're coming from. And one second point I wanted to point out, here we are in Germany. We've actually already learned this lesson. And if you look after the Second Second World War, the whole guest worker phenomena, where you have the largest diaspora outside of Turkey is living here. We actually made these mistakes already, in the sense when the guest workers came, the idea was, okay, they're guest workers. The Germans said, okay, there's no reason really to learn Turkish or deal with this. They're only going to be here a few years. Why bother? And the Turkish said the same thing. And on both sides, they said it's a joint responsibility. And that's how you have these separate communities evolving. Exactly. So we've been there, we've done that. And I think there I've seen some very good discussions. One of our German students, I don't know if he's still in the room, gave a presentation today exactly on this issue in terms of really, I think Germans are realizing today, this is a two-way street. Right now, who knows how long the refugees will be here? Right now, let's take the opportunity. Maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's much longer. Unfortunately, I think it will not be 1 year. I think it will be longer. And let's take the initiative now, as you said, to go, to speak, to ask, to get questions, get to know. And it's then a win-win situation. The society as a whole will play together as a team much better.
Exactly.
We have to get to know our teammates, get to know their strengths, get to know their weaknesses, and then the whole team will actually play better. But really important contributions. So last but not least, Jeremiah, if you could.
Yeah, I like what you said about that before respect, there must be some sort of,
Can you speak closer to the microphone?
Hello?
I don't know.
I think it's off, no?
Darnell's second job as our expert on all things technical, or maybe put it in the other. Yeah?
I'm coming, Darnell.
Or we could just use the wireless for a second. We could hand them.
Is here?
Could we borrow the wireless microphone maybe, or just for a second, and then? Oh, there it is. There we go. That's the one. Okay. Just for now, and then they don't. Yeah. Please.
Yeah, I feel like before we can get to the stage of respect, I mean, looking at Germany, it's sort of in an infancy stage. I feel like all humans are born with empathy, and empathy comes with sitting with me, and then understanding where I come from. I was outside of Berlin, like 2 hours outside of Berlin, and there were kids who never sat with a black person before. So they came, we invited one of them for the beer, and then we decided to go. And after an hour, he brought maybe like 6 kids from that village. That the whole night, they were telling me how they never thought I'm like this as a black person. For them was living in a different world, totally different realm of humanity. And but for the fact that they sat with me, I think they kind of like the idea of the empathy, that we breathe the same, we talk the same, we have the same strives and thank you, and ambitions. So I feel like for me the issue of racism and immigration, of course, is very immediate issue that needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, if you have a cut here and then you just put the bandage and ignore it, I mean, of course, I feel like the same narratives or the same way that we used before, that Malcolm X used, that Steve Biko used, that all these guys use, we cannot use them today. It's different times right now. And I feel like, but it still needs to be addressed, but not as the way they addressed it. I think we should evolve as human beings. I was writing a feature film, and there's this line that I wrote. It says that a black fist used to be as a symbol of protest, like 1966, I think so. But now, in a few years to come, it will become a symbol of Euro in the black clutch fist. That in a sense that it's not necessarily about even the color of your skin, that it's going to transcend into becoming like a power shift a bit of a power shift. That is going to move away from, because you're black, you are inadequate, but more like it's going to be power shift. I believe in a few years down the line. But for now, I think the idea of racism and immigration needs to be addressed as it is.
Excellent. And then just maybe to add on that, and I'd love to immediately use the wireless mic and Mike and take some comments and questions from you. I think it actually goes even beyond race. I mean, on the one hand, race sometimes is the most obvious in terms of where discrimination comes in, but I think we need to be aware it happens every day. When I go to the USA with my family, for example, I go in one line as a US citizen, my wife goes another as a Tunisian, Italian, German citizen. When we go to Tunisia, it's the other way around. She goes in one line, I'm then the foreigner. Our society, every way we are, is actually trying to label. In Germany, when we do taxes, I pay an extra tax because I check the box Catholic. My wife does not pay any extra tax because she checks the box Muslim. And all these things, is that really a helpful way for us to get to know our identities? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe our passport means a lot to us. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe our religion means a lot to us. Maybe it doesn't. And that's a very deep question that I think we all need to, in a very sensitive way, ask, again, on a daily basis with everyone. So I think race, I definitely underline what you're saying, but I think it goes even deeper. And I think we have to go against the trend. I think our societies, whether we like it or not, are always trying to put us in boxes. You're Republican, you're Democrat, you're this nationality, you're this religion, etc. And that's, I think, the job of cultural diplomacy, to try to go in the opposite direction and see maybe this is a useful way of getting to know someone, maybe not. And that process, I think, doesn't happen enough. And it makes it very easy for extremists to say, there's an axis of good or there's an axis of evil, or just think of all the generalizations we've heard over the last 10 or 20 years. And I think that's one of the best things I would say we could do through cultural diplomacy, make it more difficult for those generalizations to begin in the first place, no matter what those generalizations are. So let's now open it up. I see we have a few responses from the panel, and also let's go back and forth. So feel free to just raise your hand if you also have comments or questions. But first, let's start here.
Yeah. I deliberately played the devil's advocate kind of with my statement. That's for sure, because I wanted to raise certain issues. One, it's because for example, I feel right now at this moment like I'm sitting in a sect. I feel like what is going on here is, we're sitting here, look at tell me if you do not see anything wrong with this, what is happening on the panel list. There's one woman, 5'6", 2, 4, 6 men. Yeah? Already right there and there's a problem. So, you're telling me that I should be discussing race, but you don't want me to discuss about women equality, this sort of things. So already right there is a problem. If you see into the audience, we came here, a lot of us, it's a bunch of black people who are coming here to come and talk about their grievances. Of course, for sure, we're just going to talk we're just going to talk to ourselves, and we're agreeing to ourselves, and we're agreeing about certain things to ourselves. But who do we actually need, or who do we have to talk to? The people who are not, we didn't even invite, well, maybe we invited and didn't come. But at least we could have put one of them in the panel. The people that we think, or we say, okay, this person should be the person who is addressing this issue of this, and this is we are talking about this, addressing it to certain a group of people. But to elaborate on what I meant by whether or not the question of race is irrelevant or not to be talked about is that, for example, it is very, very crazy. I come from South Africa. Right now, what is happening in South Africa is that we have a xenophobic attacks, towards the foreigners. That is not a race thing, Then what does that become? The minute we have what we are fighting for really, which is power, there's this grief for power. The minute we have this grief, the minute we get into that position of power, then we forget every cause. And then we do as we like. Now we discriminate against our brothers and sisters from other African countries in South Africa, just because they are in less fortunate positions than we are. So now we are powerful. Now we have taken up the position of the white man that used to oppress us. We adored them so much that we wanted to take their position in every way possible. And that's exactly what we did in South Africa. And right now there is this generalization everywhere in Germany and everywhere in the world that Africans are always talking about Africa. There is no such thing as African ideology. Africa is very diverse, it's very big, and it's very different. And you should never talk about Africa in the sense of one particular people. And that is a problem. And I have a serious problem also, right there and there with our brothers and sisters. I don't mean to deviate from the topic, but why should I be discussing right now race when I have my brothers and sisters who are discriminating against my brothers and sisters because of their sexual orientation? What is that? You see, we have a problem. You cannot tell me that homophobic or people a man who prefers to have a sexual relationship with a man is problematic and tell me that I should support you and you tell me that, you know, you should be accepted because you are a black person, you should be accepted by a white person, should support you and I should join you into your struggle of fighting against your race. That is really ludicrous. So if we're going to talk about really issues, then we have to talk about issues, you know, in a very broad way, and not only issues that affect us at that moment, especially as so-called Africans. I don't like to use the word Africans because that's a very broad thing, you know. Right now, right from the beginning, when we began, we had a Christian prayer, and I mean, I don't mean, it's not an attack. Sorry, I don't mean to attack you, sir, as the moderator. It's just to bring out certain elements of this. I really respect your work. But right there and there, you know, there was an opening to say, as Africans, we usually open certain things with a prayer, a Christian prayer. Africa is not Christianity. It's not just Christians. There's a lot of other things.
Let me just give two brief responses in defense of our organizer for the panel. The panel was actually designed by an African woman. You may not know, but in that case, in her defense, there was more, and there was supposed to be another woman on the panel. And just as good news for those who don't know, in the audience, it actually is really diverse. So it's not just blacks, I can assure you that. Yeah. We have Germany, Syria, Bulgaria, Brazil, Sierra Leone. I think it's, I don't know, Brazil. I'm just looking around the room here. Many nationalities. I would think about 40 or 50. So it's, of course, never as diverse as we'd like. I give you that. But luckily, if we can get some participation from the audience, it actually is really diverse. And for Berlin, I think very diverse, this kind of room. So that's the good news. Hopefully, we'll have some good comments and discussions. Second quick point, you made a very good, important point to really differentiate the political map of Africa from the cultural map of Africa, which, of course, are two very different things. And I think that is an issue where so often we do think of Africa, and we look, first of all, as a continent. Secondly, we look at the political map. And I think it really never is underestimated, the diversity, looking at the cultural map. And those borders really don't have much to do with the political borders. Even a country like Nigeria, as we were discussing before, 500 languages, how many cultures? So I agree with you. We really, on the one hand, yes, we have to be broad in the discussion, but we also have to be specific and see even something like Nigerian identity. Does that exist? I don't know. You know, you've got so many different cultures within those borders. So very deep, very, very important questions. But Darnell, please.
I mean, sometimes, as Mark's indicated, we have to be specific, go from the general to the specific.
Of course.
And as things are unfolding right here, right now in Germany with the refugees coming in by the tens of thousands. I was there yesterday at one of the receiving points, and one scene impressed me of a family. They were eating chicken. I didn't see the chicken. I saw the bones. I had never seen bones picked that clean. And I don't say that to be funny. They were sitting on the ground, two young children and a slightly older adolescent with their parents and maybe an uncle sitting there in front of the gate on the ground where the dogs defecate, urinate, sitting there, you know, in inclement weather. And it just stuck with me. The whole thing that's unfolding here, and if we talk about integration, then what are we trying to integrate into? A system that allows this to happen. And I'm not just talking about Germany. I'm talking about 500 years of exploitation, of war. And if you really want to talk about things, you have to talk about them in their historical context. And in the last 500 years, we are beginning now to see the results of that. Because the fact of the matter is that here in the Western world, we take the cream off the top. Yeah. We use the majority of the energy in the world. We have the cars, the airplanes, the style of life. You can't deny it. It cannot be denied. We have the televisions, the refrigerators. And so, and now as things become more globalized, of course, other people have it too. There was a discussion the other day I had with someone about the Syrian refugees. Of course they know what's going on over here in Germany and in America and in France and in England because they have internet. They see all the soap operas. They see the reality shows. They see the game shows. They see everything that kind of like promotes Western civilization, but at their expense. So as we're talking about all these things, as we talk about migration, people are migrating because there's war, there's famine, there's pestilence. And on the question of racism, I saw a report the other day, I think it was in Dresden, some little town outside of Dresden. And one of the things that really struck me was a woman saying, well, she said, I've got daughters, and all of these, most of these, migrants are young men. Then I thought about it for a minute. I was a soldier over here, and the same things were said about me, about black soldiers, more so than any other soldiers. Helmut Schmidt wrote a letter to the Pentagon and asked them not to send so many black soldiers to Germany. I mean, this was in 1980. So this whole question of like racism is a real question. I'm 68 years old, and I'm still hearing this damn conversation. And when we talk about how long is it going to take, like the Ghetto Boys say, it's a rap group. Well, how long will time, it's going to take time? Well, how long will time take? We don't have any more time. I don't have too many more days, you know? I have some cousins that live to be 99 and 100, so maybe I got 25 years left, you know? But I'd like to live in a world where we don't have these contradictions. I know this is not going to happen from one day to the next, unfortunately. And I know the balance of men and women in here on this panel is skewed. That's clear. But I want to live in a society where it wouldn't matter, where the women would feel comfortable with all men being up here, or I would feel comfortable with all women being up here. You know, that's the kind of world we should have. And make no mistake, I come from a family with very strong women. You know, I didn't see my father until the weekend because he was working all the time, but I had a strong grandmother, aunts, and a mother. I believe in the power of women, believe me. Sure. And my former wives and mothers of my children. And your wife too.
Thank you so much. Let me come in again. I'm going to contradict myself a bit, but that contradiction is going to be like an advice. Because I've had an interview before where I spoke and I said there is no racism, and I made my point. But at the same time, the racism is there. You know, I silently said it at the same time too. But now, let's talk about, because of time, we can talk about this issue till tomorrow. So because of time, let's just touch, some important points that could be like takeaway. When you go home, you think about it. Just imagine coming to Tegel Airport and meeting one Arab guy as an immigration officer. Just imagine it. It's abnormal, isn't it? Still racism. But why I'm using this as an example is that the country, the society is not helping the situation. You rightly said. We all talk about it here. Nobody's taking it home. Nobody's going to implement whatever good idea we're bringing up. So, but we still have to say, probably one or two people that could help the situation. If you go to London today, you meet an Arab, a Hindu, whomever, telling you, welcome to London. Whoa. But he's not from London. He got into London, either through parents or himself. So, but he got welcomed. Now he contributes to the society. Same thing with US. But in Germany, if you're not welcome, how would you contribute to the country? When you feel you are a stranger, when you feel not welcome, how do you think you contribute to the society? Difficult. So that is the other side of it. But at the same time, we've been busy blaming the society, but let's blame ourselves again. The point I'm coming up, that's why I said is two-way thing. Honestly speaking, because of my profession, I've been privileged to work for professors, to work for intellectuals, people. And I never noticed racism in that situation. Do you know the reason? Very simple. Because they need me at that point in time. Because I was important, or I'm important to them at that point in time. So make yourself important in any way. Educate yourself. Do the best you can to be important to somebody. The person will overlook your color, at least temporarily, even if internally the person doesn't like you and wants you. So I won't really take too much of our time, but please, it's going to be a difficult race, but make yourself important. Educate yourself. Don't only push blames on them. Of course, they have blames to be taken, but let's ignore the blames and find a way to make ourselves important. Somebody will welcome you if you're important. Thank you.
Okay. So I just have to announce a problem and possibly a solution. I was given the signal from our chairperson that we had a time problem 5 minutes ago. And I'm looking here. I don't want to make Stanley, Mary, or Samson angry because they're also supposed to be going now. However, I did really hope that we'd have some sort of a multilateral discussion. So what I'm thinking we could do, Yvette, I'm not sure where you are, but maybe invite everybody to stay this evening. I don't know if everybody knows this, but we're going to have a special evening. Actually, another part of Africa, the Maghreb, is going to be celebrating. It's an Oriental evening, where it's actually organized by a Tunisian colleague of mine, and one of the most famous singers from Tunisia, Karim, will actually be performing also later this evening. So I'm just thinking that's maybe a solution, Yvette, because I know we have the program. I don't want to interrupt the program, but maybe if you all would stay, I don't know if you have plans. I know it's Friday evening. That would give us a chance. I saw our Syrian colleague, Brazilian, many hands were going up, but I think if I start going there, then I'll have other problems with the rest of the program. So my suggestion, if everyone agrees, I'm sorry for this. I wanted to actually take many questions, is that hopefully everyone can stay. We have now 3 more components of this event. It was scheduled to end at around 7:30. As far as I know, right around 8 o'clock, the Oriental evening is scheduled to begin. I think that'd be really interesting. We have a lot of sub-Saharan Africa here. A lot of Maghreb will be coming later tonight. Many Germans, Syrians, Brazilians, Americans, and Turkish in between. So it could be really interesting. So it's not an ideal solution. I would have liked to continue this thread. It's a huge topic. So Yvette, I think it's too big of a topic. That's the lesson learned from this session. But I really appreciated at least discussing some of the issues. Part of our job, I think, in an event like this is at least raising awareness to these issues. We're not necessarily going to come up with solutions with these issues. The first step is raising the awareness. That, I think, we have accomplished. And I'm hoping indirectly, multilaterally, we can have private conversations and also bigger conversations this evening and also in the future to continue. But unfortunately, I do need to conclude, even though I feel it's kind of half of a conversation. But I really enjoyed this myself. I think it's unfortunately a very important issue, getting more and more urgent every day. We can't ignore it, and we have to try in as sensitive a way as we can to discuss it and try to be constructive. What can I do? What can we do? And I think there, coming back to the local global discussion, let's think local very clearly. You know, if we can allow one human being to breathe easier because of some of our efforts, great. And I think that's already a big step forward if each of us can do that. So that's my recommendation. You know, think local. Let's think very concrete. There's a lot of people in the city right now that need our help. Darnell, you were referring to some cases there. Let's not forget that, and let's try to think in a very open way how we can each contribute. But let's take this opportunity, please, to express our sincere gratitude to the entire panel for, I think, a very interesting conversation. And yeah, I'm ready. So if you'd like to continue this conversation, Yvette or anyone, come to us. We're here. And, we'd be happy next week or whenever you'd like to continue this. Really important issue. It's only going to increase. We're also doing a special event in honor of Syria, I believe, the 28th of November. So check also the calendar of the ICD House of Arts and Culture. That's another good opportunity where the focus actually is Syria. So let's continue this. And I will give the microphone back to our moderator. But thanks again, everyone, for listening and for joining the discussion. Thank you.